Hello and welcome to Class 1 Introduction to CorelDRAW. I just want to say quickly before we start that I do have the children here today and the baby here on the table in the bouncy chair, so you might hear some jingles and some little ones running in and out. I'll do my best to keep them preoccupied and hopefully they let me get through this without too many interruptions. So to start, we're going to first go through how to set up your canvas in CorelDRAW and make sure all of your settings are the way they should be. So you're going to want to open up your CorelDRAW program. I use CorelDRAW 5. There is a free 30-day trial on the website if you haven't downloaded that already.
Mommy, is that balloon?
Yes, there's a balloon. My 2-year-old is on my lap right now, so my computer is kind of slow, but once this gets going.
Mommy, is this three balloons?
Yes, honey. Shh. Try to be quiet.
Is that a baby leaf, Mom?
Baby.
No, it's not baby leaf.
Okay.
It's baby leaf.
All right, once you get to the quick start window, you're going to see Start New, and you're going to click on New Blank Document. The new template isn't anything that I use. Those are preset templates that they have on here, like for hotel brochures and menus and things like that. I never use this. So click on the New Blank Document. And I always set my custom document to custom size, custom. You can put your name on here if you want to save it as a preset template in your settings, but I never do. The width I always use in inches.
Yeah.
Yes, honey. And I use a 9x9 square. It doesn't matter which layout it is because it's a square, but this is what you would click on if you wanted to have it as a portrait layout, if you wanted a taller, wider landscape. For the color mode, I always use RGB. That's what's read easily by most computer programs. They do have the CMYK, which Adobe Illustrator does read, but I always set it to the RGB. That's the more basic color palette. And the resolution is always 300 dpi. This is the highest resolution that you want to set it for, and that's really good for print. So if people were to use your graphics, like clipart sets for stationery, things like that, you wouldn't want to go any lower than 300 dpi. For web design, you don't need to go any higher than 72 dpi, but I always make my images 300 no matter what the client's using it for, because then it's always easier to save down rather than saving up. The image will become pixelated. Honey, okay. Okay, and for the preview mode I always set it at enhanced. If you set it at normal, it will look fine if you have it zoomed at 100%, but if you want to zoom in to any area to make any little changes, it's going to look pixelated. Same with pixels. So always have that at enhanced. And press OK.
Mommy, is that pretty?
Yes, honey. And here is your canvas. If you start doodling and making your shapes, sorry, my little ones are wide awake today. It's okay if you go outside this canvas. It will save whatever you create wherever you put it. But the canvas is nice to have just to kind of keep your things in one area and keep it the size and dimensions that you want to do it. And you can always move things around and everything, but this is a good thing to start with. Okay, so I've got my little sticky notes here for what we're going to go through. And all right, we just did canvas setup. Navbar tools. Here is your nav bar, your file, edit, view, layout, all these things are your nav bar. I also call these my nav bar tools because they're the same, going in the same direction on the top of the page. I don't use half of the tools in this program. It can be a little overwhelming if you look at it all at once. But I'm going to try to do this as simply as possible and not throw in anything extra that I don't use in every graphic image that I create. So of course you've got your file. That's what you're going to use when you save your programs and import different shapes and publish to PDF format and open other documents. That's all you're really going to use this for, is open, save as, import, and publish. Your edit, you will use your paste once in a while if you have images of a client that they want you to use as a reference for creating their cartoon character. You'll probably want to copy and paste their image in there. Same goes for color palettes that clients may give you to reference. And you will use your select all once in a while if you want to regroup your layers all together and make everything one group. I'll get more into that in depth later on, but just so you know where that is. And view, I never really use this, but if for some reason you forgot to set your view at enhanced and things are looking kind of fuzzy, this is where you go to switch that over to enhanced. Effects is something that you can get into if you want. I personally don't use it very much, but it's more for photo editing. You can play around with that, but that's something that's a little bit more advanced for photographers. I don't use bitmaps, none of this really. Sometimes text for logo design, but there's a text tool that I use over here for that most of the time. So really only edit, file, view. That's about it that you need to know for up here. These are shortcuts to the buttons up here. So that's kind of repeating what I just went over. You can use the preset buttons shortcuts instead, but that's there if you want. The paste is here. Here is the zoom field. Right now it's set at 46%. That's because they are showing you your whole canvas in your window. If you want it at 100%, say the full size that you're going to see that image at, if you have it saved as a image, you can see it at 100%, and that makes it the actual size, print size, all that. Here's your presets that you plugged in there right when we were creating our canvas, your 9 inches. You can change this around if for some reason you think that you're making an image that's a little bit taller, a little bit wider, and you want to adjust that. This is where you adjust that. And this is the layout, landscape layout, portrait layout, and your units, inches. If you want to change this around, which I do when I start drawing, because I want to start drawing in pixels. I don't want to start drawing in inches, because for all of my measurements, when I start a graphic, it's all in pixels. So always go over to units, and before you start your image, set it to pixels. And here is the nudge distance. This is when you have a shape on your canvas and you want to move it a little bit left or right or completely over here. This is one of the ways that you can do that. You can click on a shape and drag it, but if you want really, really precise, my children are growling at each other. I don't know if they're dinosaurs right now. If you want really precise nudge like maybe just a couple pixels here and there just to get little lines to line up perfectly or corners to line up perfectly, this is what you're going to use. And this is the distance that the shape is going to move at one time. This is set at 80 pixels. That's going to move it quite a bit. It's going to be like, if you start where my cursor is right here, it will move it to say right here. I don't want my images to move that much. I want it to move the smallest amount possible, and that would be setting it at a 1 pixel. So I have full control over where it goes and its precision. For these duplicate distance, I always like it to be set at 0 pixels. If you have an image, and hold on honey, keep that open. If you have an image that you want to add highlights to, or if you have an image that you want 2 of, I always use the duplicate command. That's going to take that image and make an exact copy of it. And the way it was set right now, the presets, that's set it at a 75 pixel distance. So say if you had an image right here and you duplicated it, it would move it this way and up 75 pixels. And I like my duplicate image to be exactly right on top of the other, so that I can move it if I want to and the program's not moving it for me. So set that to 1 pixel, 1 pixel. And that is it for the settings as far as your layout and your nudge and your pixel duplicate distance. So pretty straightforward. I know it's a lot to take in all at one time, but as long as you remember your 9 inches, 1 pixel nudge, and oops, this is 0, sorry, 0 pixel duplicate distance. Sorry, I had that 1 and I must have been thinking about the nudge. Sorry, that is 0. So also notice that when you change your units from inches to pixels, this number over here will change from 9 inches to 2,700 pixels. That's correct. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the sidebar tools and tool functions. I believe that was next on my list. Yes. Oh, yes. Also, I wanted to mention this is a way to zoom in and out. But there's also a zoom on the sidebar. And a lot of these things are repeated. There's a few different ways to do multiple tasks that you'll be using. So it's just going to depend on what your personal preference is as far as how you want to go about doing it. Okay. This little arrow right here is called the pick tool. That is going to be used a lot. It's what you're going to use to select different shapes. If you want to edit the shapes, if you want to make the colors different, all of that stuff you're going to use your pick tool for. This is similar to the pick tool. I use this to select the different points of a certain shape. I'll color after with you, baby. Mommy's teaching you class. If you have a shape like a square, that square will have 4 points. And if you select that square with the pick tool, you'll be able to change the size. But if you select the square with the shape tool, you'll be able to select the points. And you can move the points in and out and make it not a square or whatever you want to do with it. So this is a picker tool, but it's a little bit more advanced if you want to really be able to manipulate the shape of what you're drawing. This is the crop tool. You'll use that at the end of your composition. Just to make everything crisp and clean before you save your image. Your zoom tool. And you're going to use that a lot when you start putting in details. I'm just going to grab my baby so he's happier. He's bouncy. Okay. So if you have an image, let me open one. Let me import something so I can actually show you what the difference looks like when you're zooming in and out. Okay.
Hey, Mommy, this is my side. Because we've been
I know, I'm in your seat. It's okay, sweetie. Sorry, I might have to take a break in a minute.
Mommy,
My son's getting a little fussy. All right, say you had this image here. Don't worry about what I'm doing as far as grouping. Okay, hold on, baby. Why don't you sit in Macy's seat? Okay, so if I have an image and I want to zoom in, okay, I think I'm going to have to come right back. Sorry about this. I'm just going to regroup the children and make sure that they're not too grumpy so you can understand what I'm doing. So I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. The little 2-year-old is in the playroom, so I'm hoping he gives me a couple minutes. Okay, so let me demonstrate how to use this zoom tool and show you exactly how the nudge and stuff is going to work with a graphic up here. All right, so yes, you can work at, put this at 100%, you can work at 100% and never change it, but say I want to go in and move these eyelashes or move the earring or, make the zipper. That is something that you're going to really want to zoom into closely so you can make sure that all of these lines and shapes are really meeting up. So to zoom in, what I just did, I clicked the zoom icon, and if you click the left mouse button and hold it down and move your mouse, you can select the area that you want to zoom into. When you let it go, it brings you in. And you can zoom in and out as far as you want. See these lines right here, they are very small and you really want them to be as close as possible, or it's going to look funny if the client really sees close up. I'm going to ungroup these layers and show you what the nudge is going to look like. And I'll do the duplicate too so you can see that. Okay, say if I want to duplicate this layer and make part of it darker or something. If you select that layer and press Control D, that just copied that layer right on top of, that copied the top lip shape right on top of the original one. And that is what you set to be at 0. So it didn't move at all. It's right there for you. And if you want to move that, you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard and move it up. And this is that 1 pixel distance, nudge distance that I was telling you about. Or down or side to side. And or you can select it with the mouse. If you want to select something with the mouse, make sure your picker tool is selected. And then when you hover over that shape that you want to move, make sure that this 4-direction arrow thing is showing up. And that's when you can click it and move it. And also, if you just tap the mouse key like this, click on that, when that 4-sided arrow is showing up, you notice that you can go from curved arrows on the side of this shape to squares. When it's squares, that means that you can move it and it's going to stay the same. If you put it to the curved arrows, that is going to allow you to rotate this shape. If you want to rotate the shape, you hover over one of these curved arrows until your little circle arrow is showing up. Hold down the left mouse key and you can turn it. If you want it turned to, say, exactly 45 degrees, you can see that this number is changing up here when you are when you're moving it. Exactly 45 degrees, you can go up here and type in 45, enter, and it will move it 45 degrees, or whatever degree you want. Notice that once we start working on an image, these tools up here have changed. They're no longer the settings tools that you were playing around with. Those disappear once you start working. So make sure that you get those settings put in there as far as the nudge distance and the duplicate distance before you start anything. Now, these are just object sizes. I never use these. If I want to change an object size, I just click on the object. So when you see those squares, you know that it's selected, and then you can hover over the corner and make it larger or smaller. You can use these numbers if you want to. That will manipulate the shape, that will make it smaller one way, larger the other way. But I just find it that when I make a shape, I like it to be the proportion that it's in. I just might want it a little smaller or bigger. So I do it this way. If you want to undo something, say you moved this and you're like, I really don't like it where it is, or I liked it the way it was before, you hit Control Z multiple times if you want to undo more than one thing. This only works for a short amount of undos. I think it's probably about 10 undos before it stops working. Let me see. Done probably 10 so far, maybe 20. Yeah, maybe 20. You can probably edit that in a setting. I have never played around with that, but now it's not letting me undo anymore, so I'll have to put that back manually. But that is how you undo things, or you can go up to this little arrow and click this for undo or redo. That's up there. Let's see. I have 2 layers made of that right now. If I decide that I duplicated a layer and I don't want that layer anymore, you can always just select it with the picker tool and hit delete on your keyboard, and it's gone away. Okay, so let me go back to 100% zoom. And this freehand tool is what makes me love CorelDRAW. The go-to program for most artists in this industry right now is Adobe Illustrator. And the reason why, right here, the reason why I don't use Adobe Illustrator for anything besides exporting files to different formats is because it does not have this freehand tool. With Adobe Illustrator, how you draw shapes is by using a pen tool. And let me just show you this in case you do end up going with Adobe Illustrator. They're pretty similar as far as what you can do with each program, but what I do in Adobe Illustrator would take me a fraction of time. If I were to do this heart in Adobe Illustrator, it would take me 2 minutes opposed to 20 seconds in CorelDRAW. Or this little guy here might take me a half hour in Adobe Illustrator at least, and maybe 10 minutes at the most in CorelDRAW. Oh gosh, I don't even use this for, okay. This is what you use to draw in Adobe Illustrator as the pen tool. And let me just show you how you do it, just so you can see why I prefer Corel. And it might help you as far as which program would be good for you. So let's see if I remember even how to do this. It's been a while. For shapes, if you want to do a shape, you have to, oh, my computer is not being nice right now. Okay. You make anchor points. And you can't draw just a shape like a round face. You have to do anchor points like this. And then you have to manipulate each one of these anchor points into a curve point. So if you, sorry, I don't know what I'm doing here. If you select the, where is it? Sorry, I wasn't expecting to go in here and show you this, but I think it's important. There's a curve line somewhere. Convert anchor point, I think, is what you use. Okay. Yes. All right. So you're going to want to, if you want to make this round, you use the convert anchor point tool and make this, click it, and then you can drag out the point and make it curvy in for wherever your anchors are. And then you can delete a point by clicking on it. But this is what you have to do for every shape to make it a rounded corner. And that, for me, takes forever. So if you're really wanting to make money and get the most time for your money, I would go with Corel, because what we were just doing in here, trying to make a face shape, let me show you how easy it is in CorelDRAW. If you use your Freehand tool, you click down your left mouse key, hold it down, and I'm going to go in here, make a rounded shape. Yeah, it looks yucky, but now if you click the center, double click the center, you'll see all these dots there already, and this line is already curved. Now, if I want to go in and I want to make it smoother, I just double click these curves that I don't think that I need or that are extras. And if I click on one, my arrows are already there. I don't have to switch from a pen tool to an anchor point or a convert anchor point tool. And this is already a round shape, opposed to having to go in here, click every little squared anchor and round that out. So this is my little magic pixie dust when it comes to using a program. I love, 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 love the Freehand tool. It's a huge, huge time saver. So this little guy is going to be what you're using most of the time when you're going in here and drawing shapes. When you draw a shape like this that we just made, it will show up with the outline that you have set and the color fill that you have set. You can make your whole drawing, if you wanted, with no fill and just an outline, like as a wireframe. But I like to go in, and if I know I'm making a head, I like to go in. If I make the head like this, I can go in and change it, take out the outline, leave the outline, put in a color fill by just double clicking this square. You open up this box, and you can select your skin color, you know, and press enter, and then it fills your shape. And same goes if you double click that pen outline. You can make this outline thicker by changing the width, pressing enter, or you can do things like change the line style if you wanted a dotted line. Sometimes I use this if I'm making like lines in jeans, like the stitching of a pant. Like I might put a line in there that's dotted. This is where you do that. And that changes to a dotted line. And you can make it disappear altogether by putting this at none. Or you can go in and change the line color by that. So you can go in and play around with things like that. If you don't have a shape selected and you touch this like I just did, it's going to assume that you're getting ready to make another shape. So it's going to start the whole thing over. Say I want to make a shape that is filled with pink with no outline. And I want to preset that because I'm thinking I'm going to be making quite a few of those shapes with that color, so it will save time to preset it. I would go down to the outline and it will bring up this little thing and just make sure, yeah, graphic, okay. And this is setting up what your shape is going to be when you draw that line using the or draw that shape using the freehand tool. So I said I want no outline. Oops. So you go to width, none, okay. And then I wanted it filled pink. Click the fill bucket, okay. And this, I always use the models for the colors. CorelDRAW, you can use, it lets you use RGB, it lets you use CMYK palettes both at the same time. If you use something like Adobe Illustrator, you will be using one or the other. That's just how these programs are set up. So that's just another reason why I like Corel over Adobe. But select pink. This is your fill color. You can either press OK or press Enter, and these are your preset settings for the next shape we're going to draw with the freehand tool. So if you go over and select the freehand tool and draw a shape, you will see the line show up first. Make sure you connect that shape. Let it go. And that is what's going to show up because that's what you put in there for the command. If you are drawing a shape and you don't connect that line, it will show up as nothing, but you'll still see these points. So you know there's a line there, but it's not showing anything because there's no outline selected, but you know you need to fix that. So if that happens to you, you want to hover over that. Make sure your little four-corner arrow is showing. Click it. Or double click it, sorry, and then you'll see the path. The path are the dots that and the line that shows up when you're making your mouse stroke. You can click that arrow because that's where the path is ended, that's not connected, and just bring it over. And they're kind of like magnetized to each other, and they'll stick together once you get it close, and just let it go. And there is your shape. With the fill that shows up. If you want to go in here and you want to make this a perfectly round or a smoother line, you see that you have these little nodes here. That happens when your mouse slows down. That's just the program reading where you're putting the line. If you go in, double click these little extra nodes that you don't think you want in there, that's kind of making a jump in the shape, and delete those, that shape's going to smooth right out like this. And if you want to manipulate the shape, if you click on that node, just click on it, the little arrows will show up and you can pull those arrows out, move them around however you want to move them. So yeah, little crescent shape for you right here. If you do something like this and you say, hey, that looks kind of like a shape of an eyebrow or something, and you want to use that, but you're like, oh dang, it's upside down. Easy peasy, all you're going to do is go to your select tool, make sure that that's selected, and when it's selected, you're going to see this up here, mirror horizontally, mirror vertically. If you want to flip that upside down to make a nice little arch for an eyebrow, you're going to go to this one, click it, and it just flipped. And you can, these little squares right here is, in addition to making it smaller or bigger, if you click on the middle squares right here or on this side, you can make it more narrow or longer. But if we're doing an eyebrow, there we go. And I want to make that eyebrow brown. Say you have this a color and you want to change that color, you go down to here, you change the fill by double clicking that, and you go down here, find a color you like. You can use the palettes. If you go into the palettes section, these are all preset colors. But I tend to get kind of bored with these, and some of them are a little muddy. Like this brown looks kind of a little muddy to me. I like a little bit more of a oomph in my colors. So I use the models more than the palettes, but that's a personal preference too. Palettes are nice if you're doing simple clip art sets and things like that. It's easy to find quick colors that way. But let's see. I'm going to select a brown, and this is the color that shape currently is, and it says old color there when you hover over it. And this is the new color that shape will be changed to. Or if you see a color on here that you want to match that shape perfectly to, say you like this shape of the eyebrow better than this one, but you want the same color, you can select this little eyedropper tool and hover over whatever color you want to change this shape to. For instance, this brown. Click on that. It will show you that brown in this window, and you can press OK or Enter, and voila! It just changed that to the color eyebrow that was on there before. And we want to get rid of this one. Just click on it and delete. So these things are going to be, of course, I'm going through it really fast, and your head's probably spinning right now, but it's the same process over and over and over and over again. And they're just little different techniques that you'll kind of find that you like to do. And once you get your pattern, once you get kind of a routine as far as how you create whatever images that you're creating, it's going to be second nature, and it's going to come really easy to you. All right, I just undid what I did, and her eyebrow's back. So the next tool that we'll talk about, this is also another one of those things that here's the fill tool over here, but it's over here too. So whichever one you like using more, I'm always over here. So, but feel free to play around and do whatever's most comfortable for you. Your rectangle tool, these are if you want to make shapes like squares easily. Select your rectangle, and up here, like I said, these change no matter what tool you're on. It's just giving you the option up here now to make the corners of that square curved, or into the little scalloped corner shape, or the squared corner shape. I use the squared corner shape if I'm doing like bathroom tiles or something like that for a background, and I use the round corner a lot for things if you're making cute shapes for furniture. It will come when you make a shape by clicking and dragging and letting go, it will be square. But if you go up here, select on the round corner, you use these arrows to make that corner rounder, say at 20 pixels, and that shape has a nice little round corner now. And you can go down in the pixels too if you want it to have a lesser corner. And that's how that works. The same goes with the circle, the ellipse tool. That's just a circle. If you're making one of these preset shapes, like a circle, you see the number over here is changing when you're drawing that. If you want this to be a perfect circle, go over here and put the same number in that box on the bottom that there is on the top, and that circle will change to now you know it's a perfect circle. If you make a circle and you decide I want to move around those little points because I want to make it oblong or I want to make it into a face shape, you can do that by clicking it and make sure your little arrow is showing. If you click the right click on the mouse, you'll see this come up and there's a button that says Convert Curves. If you click on that, Convert to Curves, you'll now, if you double click it, see your little nodes pop up. So it's like you drew it with a freehand tool, but you just did it a little faster and easier, and now you get your curves and you can do whatever you want with the shape and make it into a prism or whatever you want to do with it by moving your little arrows and stuff like that. So that's a neat little trick that I use pretty often to convert the curves. If I want to convert the curve of the square, just click it, right click it, convert to curves, and then double click the shape, and then you'll see your little points in that square. So that's something to play around with. Polygon tool is the same thing. It's just going to make polygons, stars, whatever, spirals, shape you want. The preset shapes, I don't really use them a whole lot. I might use the heart once in a while. If you click on the preset, the basic shape tool, here is what you're going to go up to pick your shape. If you click on that little arrow on the corner, it will bring down that shape. They don't have very many to choose from, but like I said, the heart might come in handy, the drop might come in handy, the circle might come in handy if you're making donuts or something like that for a clip art set or something. So that's there. And your text tool. Your text tool is good to use when you are making logos. I get some clients who order characters from me and say, I want my sweatshirt to say this, or I want a name tag and stuff like that. That's fine, but have them bear in mind that when you have little text on something that's going to be little on a website, that text is probably going to mush together and really not be legible. So make sure that if you are going to use text when you're doing a character or doing a design that's not a logo design, that it's going to work well with what you are trying to do with the image. If you have your text tool selected, click it, drag it into a square. This is the square that's going to allow you to type into this area. So this is your text area that you're creating. Your little mouse will show up or your cursor will show up. And then you can change your fonts by doing this and change your bold and your size of the font. And this is also going to be how you change the color. Sorry, my computer's really slow right now. It's kind of not going along with what I'm doing. Down here, that color fill tool is what you're going to use to change the text. So if you click in there and say hi and highlight that like you're using a regular Word document or something, go down here to the color fill, double click it, and I want to make it blue. Okay. Or enter, whatever my computer's going to let me do. And then get your color picker tool and select off that so it's not, you don't see all those squares. And you can see your highs showing up blue. You can highlight it, make it bigger, all this crazy fun stuff. If you make something too big that's not going to fit into the area that you set up, your little dotted text area is going to show up red like you see right now, and then text is going to disappear. That means that whatever you wrote is now too big to fit into that area. So you either need to choose smaller font, or if it's still too big, you can, and you want 150 for that font, you can go in here and make the text area as large as what you need to for that to show up. Also for text, let me move this over here a little bit off our canvas. Like I said, this is okay to do. Just if you're wanting to keep something a certain size, make sure you stay within the page line. Okay, if you want to change this shape, or if you have a funky font on here, say elephants and cherry trees font on here. Let's make it smaller so you can see. And you want to manipulate the shapes of these lines. This is something that makes CorelDRAW really cool too, because you can right click, convert to curves, and now these are a shape. It's not acting as a font anymore. They're acting as shapes, where you're going to see your little nodes show up. If you click on those nodes, you can move the nodes and manipulate the shape however you want to manipulate it. This comes in really handy when you're trying to fit text in with an image and try to make a logo design. That is something that you're going to want to play around with and get familiar with, because it's that's a pretty cool tool and it will give you some good effects. So that's the text tool. The other thing down here, I don't use these. What I do use once in a while is, aside from the color fill, say I want to do a pattern in here, which I don't recommend using very often. I like to, if I wanted polka dots in here, I'd probably go in and make my own polka dots, because the set patterns that they have here are cute, but sometimes the image quality for them is pixelated and not as high quality as the shapes that you're creating. So sometimes they won't match, but it's here if you want to play around with it. So say you have the ball. She's holding a ball, I guess. Now we'll say that's a ball. And go down to the fill tool, click it once, and it's going to bring up this. You can do a texture fill, you can do a pattern fill. If you click on pattern fill, it's going to show you all these preset patterns that you can choose, and you choose the colors for your patterns, blah blah blah. If you want a really specific color that isn't in here, you can click other. That will bring you to the models table that I like to use, or you can use your color picker tool and go over here and select a color that you're already using, and you know, the size of the pattern, the width. They say like 100 pixels is going to make it small, so there will be a lot of that pattern that will show up. This is all stuff that you're just going to have to play with. Then you press OK. That's what that all that I just put in there did. So it has a pattern now, and that pattern will change, will move with your shape, whatever you do with it. Let me take that off there. Okay. The thing that I use a lot for the cheeks and eyelids, see how the colors kind of faded in the middle and faded on the sides, and some of her hair is darker by the roots and it gets lighter. That is due to a gradient tool. And the gradient tool is really cool to use, but a lot of artists overdo it, I think. Sometimes it's, you know, it's less is more, and I think this is one of those situations. So as far as gradient tool goes, if you're going to use gradients, I would stick to the lips that has a gradient in it. Cheeks are okay, eyelids are okay, irises are okay, hair. But as far as like going in and using gradients for the skin and all of your clothing and stuff like that, like you can, and that can be your style. Just be careful not to make things more complicated for you. And when you're creating an image, sometimes you know, the cleaner and the crisper the colors they are, they print better, things like that. So you just keep that in mind. But Uh-oh, my little boy is crying. Hold on. I'm gonna have to pause you and come back in a minute. Okay, sorry about that. We're almost done with the introduction, so bear with me for the next few minutes and try to get this wrapped up. Gradients, like I was talking about. Say you're going to use this as a cheek shape for a character. We'll use this as a cheek shape. I always use a radial gradient, and that if you go down here to the color bucket, your gradient, it's actually called a fountain fill. So click on the fountain fill, and your color that you have there is showing up now from, and I want a skin color, so I'm going to go over here, get my picker tool, grab the skin color, and this is set at a linear gradient, so that gradient is going to go from side to side. If I want a round gradient, I go to radial gradient, and it's going to be round like this. In this case, if I wanted it to use as a cheek, I'd want the peach on the outside and the pink on the inside. So I would move these from the top one to the skin color. Oops. I'd want to change these. I'd want this one, the top one, to be the skin color, and then the bottom one to be the pink color in the middle. And there's, here's your gradient with that cheek fill. And if for some reason, if it's too pinky on the outside, you want to make it more peach on the outside, you can go back to the fountain fill. And this is an edge pad command. If you click that up on that arrow, I usually do 20 for my edge pad. And that will give you a nice pink in the middle, but it's not going to give you the pink on the outside. So there's that. There's a cheek. And I use radials for zoom in here and show you. For the lips, it's going from lighter to darker, and then the eyes is going from darker to lighter. And then I use an up and down radial for the hair. So those are the radial gradients and linear gradients for the hair and the eyes and the lips, and then the radial for the cheeks, rounded gradients. Let's see. Hey, sweetie, my little boy's talking. For some of the couple advanced things that I do use once in a while is transparency tool, and there is a drop shadow tool, but I really don't like using the drop shadow tool in Corel. I have my Photoshop Elements program that I use if I want to put drop shadows behind my images. The one in Corel just doesn't look as nice to me, but if you want to use a drop shadow in Corel and you don't have the other program, or you prefer this program or the other program, that's fine. What you're going to do is, say you want to drop shadow behind the circle, you're going to select that with your picker tool and go down to, I believe it's the blend. Yes. If you hold this little black arrow down on the blend tool, all of these other ones will show up. And you can select the drop shadow tool and then click somewhere and drag it, and that's going to give you a drop shadow. If you drag it more out, that's where your drop shadow is going to be. Things like that. And you can change the color of your drop shadow up here, play around with it that way. But again, not one of my favorite tools of Corel to use, but it's there for you if you want it. The other thing that I do use that I like, takes a little to get used to it is the transparency tool, and that's something that I might use if I want something to fade. For example, let me show you something. I had a client that ordered a character that kind of wanted something kind of look like breeze, flowery sort of look, and I used a transparency to kind of give it that movement feel, and that transparency is right here on these swirls. See, they're kind of faded on the side, and then the color's coming back on the side. That's the transparency. Hold on, baby. We're almost done. Hold on. So to achieve something like this, we'll use this shape for the example. Click whatever shape you want to be faded, and again, go down to where that blend tool was. Select transparency. This is also good if you're making things like wine glasses or glasses like eyeglasses. You can use transparency on that to make it look a little translucent. And you do the same thing. You click an area and then you drag it to where you want the transparency to show up. And up here you can choose if it's linear, conial, radial, things like that. And once you have the transparency set, if you drag it over another image, it's going to show that other color through where the white was showing up, because that's where you took color out of. So that's something you can play around with too. So transparency you can use for cheeks too. You know, there's multiple ways to do multiple things. So that's there. And you can also do a transparency that's patterned. If you want, if you select that transparency tool, if you go to let's see, oh, my phone is ringing. Full color pattern, 2-color pattern. If you do a 2-color pattern, all these other little presets will show up, and you know, play around with it. It's I don't get into the patterns and stuff like that usually, but this transparency is nice once in a while to use. Okay, the last thing I want to tell you is if you've noticed, you've got this layer over here, this layer box table, and every shape that you make is a layer. So when you're using your shapes and you're using your images to create something like this girl here, every shape in this girl has a layer, has its own layer in your page up here. So you can find layers by clicking them down here, and you can move your layers around. Say you want the back of this hair for some reason to be in the front because you want to change the shape. You can select that shape, and then you can move it to the front by dragging it up higher, all the way up. Or you can right click it, go to order, and to front of page or to back of page or things like that. And that's how you're going to rearrange your layers to make things in the order you want them to be in. Oh no, honey. And that you'll use a lot too. So be aware when you're making an image, which we'll get into later on in other classes. Just be aware whatever you're making is going to create a layer over here, and you'll be able to move that thing around however you want over here. And that's about it. For saving a file, always save, always save. Whenever you've done something and you're like, oh, okay, I've done that, go up and save a new file and make sure that you're saving your work as you're going, because this does take time, and especially in the beginning, it takes a lot of time when you're learning. And the last thing you want to do is spend an hour on a face and then, oops, your computer dies and you you lose it. So it's happened to me a couple times. So make sure you go up and you go to File and you go to Save As, and save it as a CDR file. That's a CorelDRAW file in whatever client folder you're using. And just make sure you have that as a backup, because that's super important. And I think that's about it. The only thing that I can think of that I didn't mention or didn't show you is the line that I was talking about for the pants. Let me just do that real quick, actually, before I turn this off. If you go over to your Freehand tool and you just want to create a line, you don't want it to be a shape with a fill, you go down here to the line, you select your thickness, you select your line style and your line color, and press OK. And it doesn't matter if it has a fill or not. If you're just using a line, the only thing that's going to show up is the line, is the outline. So if you just did a straight line like this, and move that to the front. Sorry, it's not showing up because I did it behind the character layer, but to front of page. Where is it? Oops. There. Now there's a pant leg line, and you can double click it and move that line around and do whatever you want to do with that line. And that's how you do something like that. So lots of things to soak in, lots of things to practice. If you want to throw a few things together for me to look at, go ahead. If you have any questions about what we've gone through so far, obviously I'm here to answer any of those. And yeah, have fun with it, play around with it for a couple weeks, really get comfortable with the tools. And yeah, practice, practice, practice. Alrighty. And that is going to conclude this class.